Dust stung Eleanor Pierce's eyes as she fought to steady her wagon on the cracked, blistered earth of the Nebraska plains. The Boyer River had shrunk to a muddy thread, and the wind carried the smell of dry rot and despair. She slapped at the reins as the horses stumbled over the uneven ground. Her heart hammered her chest, louder than the creak of the wagon wheels. "Steady, just steady," she muttered to herself, though her voice trembled. Every mile forward was a mile away from home, and every mile closer to the unknown. The marshal had said it would be a simple escort. Simple, a delivery of supply manifests to a federal liaison in southern Montana. But Eleanor had learned early that the word simple often carried death in the frontier. The first sign of danger came when a plume of dust appeared over the horizon. Too fast, too purposeful. She froze. "Horses, get ready," she whispered. But the horses were already panicked, sensing danger before she did. By the time the first shots rang out, 2 soldiers riding ahead of her had fallen, their bodies thrown sideways as the attackers surged out of the dust. Eleanor's heart leapt in her throat. She whipped the reins and screamed at the animals, her voice raw and frantic. "Move! Move now!" The wagon tipped sharply over a rut, sending supplies clattering, some boxes spilling into the dirt. She barely managed to grab the reins with both hands. Her knuckles were white, and sweat poured down her face. Through the haze of dust, a figure appeared, tall, imposing, and deliberate. A man on horseback with a scar slicing across his left cheek and eyes that burned with both caution and command. He rode straight toward the chaos, seemingly unafraid of the shooters. Eleanor gasped. His presence seemed to calm the horses almost instantly. "Stop!" he shouted in a voice low and commanding. "Stand down, or the dead will multiply." Eleanor froze, unsure whether to flee or fight. The attackers hesitated, but the man's gaze held them in place. He rode closer, dismounting with a grace that spoke of authority honed through years of necessity. "You shouldn't be here, woman," he said, finally turning toward her. "But killing you only makes them stronger." Her chest heaved. Who are you?" she demanded, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her pulse. "I am Caleb Iron Bear," he said simply, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. "And if you value your life, follow me." Eleanor hesitated only for a second before nodding, her entire body trembling. She had nowhere else to go. She had lost everything: her mother, her father, her home. And if she survived this, it would be by the mercy of a man she didn't know. The dust settled as Caleb led her toward a hidden ravine. There, under the sparse shade of a lone cottonwood, he examined the wagon and supplies, his gaze sharp, assessing. "You carry papers," he said, looking at her. "I can see them. What is their purpose?" Eleanor swallowed hard. "Their supply manifests for a federal liaison. That's all I know. The marshal said I should deliver them safely." Her voice cracked. I didn't ask for danger." Caleb's expression didn't soften. "Danger finds those who move across these lands, girl. Even the innocent. You must learn that quickly." She flinched at the weight in his words. "And if I can't," she whispered. "You will," he said simply, though there was no softness in his tone. "Or you won't survive. Your choice." That night, Eleanor huddled under a thin blanket beside the ravine while Caleb kept watch. She watched him move silently, his shadow cutting across the firelight, and she felt a strange combination of fear and admiration. She wanted to speak, but found words impossible. Instead, she whispered to herself, "I can do this. I have to." By morning, Caleb had shown her how to ride properly in formation, how to keep the horses calm under stress, and how to carry her weight without exhausting the animals. "The frontier will not forgive mistakes," he said, "and neither will those who covet what you carry." Eleanor's mind raced. "What do you mean?" "Those papers," he said sharply. "They are more than supply manifests. They reveal theft, lies, and manipulation. Livestock stolen, lands claimed under false reports, violence justified. You are a messenger of truth, whether you know it or not." She swallowed. I didn't know." "You must learn quickly," he said, eyes narrowing. and you must survive. Their journey resumed under tense silence, broken only by the occasional warning from Caleb or the nervous snorts of the horses. Eleanor felt her fear twist into determination. Every day, she learned a little more, not just about survival, but about the man guiding her. Caleb was unyielding yet patient, commanding yet fair. She felt the stirrings of respect, though she would never admit it aloud. By the third day, they had reached the edge of the Lakota camp. Eleanor had never seen such organized structure in her life. Smoke spiraled gently from cooking fires, children played warily, and warriors moved with a precision that left her breathless. Caleb dismounted, gesturing for her to follow. "Do as I do," he said. "Learn, listen, and respect. Speak only when spoken to. Understand this. One wrong word can cost lives." Eleanor's stomach twisted with nerves. She stepped forward, trying to appear calm. The elder's eyes settled on her immediately. Murmurs ran through the camp. Caleb's gaze met hers, silent but firm, reminding her to steady herself. I am Eleanor Pierce," she said, voice quivering slightly. "I come with nothing but these papers, and I mean no harm." A tall elder stepped forward, eyes sharp. "You bring more than papers," he said. "We can see it in your eyes. Do you understand what you have entered?" Eleanor swallowed. I hope to learn, and I hope to help." The elder's eyes did not soften. Learning and helping are not the same as surviving. Her chest tightened. "I understand." Caleb's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. "Remember, trust must be earned, girl, and it is earned slowly." The next days were brutal. Eleanor tried to teach the children, but they ignored her instructions, preferring to play and test her patience. She mispronounced words, broke minor etiquette, and was corrected sharply by the women of the tribe. Each failure felt like a public humiliation, and Eleanor often retreated to the edge of camp to hide her tears. One evening, sitting near the fire, she spoke softly to Caleb. "I can't do this. I'm failing them. I'm failing you. You are learning more than you realize," he said quietly, his voice low, almost private. "Every mistake teaches you. Every humiliation builds strength." She looked at him, firelight dancing across his scarred face. "And you? Have you never failed?" He met her gaze, unflinching. "I have. Every day. The difference is we survive them." A strange comfort filled her chest. For the first time, Eleanor felt she could endure. And maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to understand the weight of trust and respect in this new world. But the peace was fragile. Rumors reached them. Cattle had disappeared, settlers were blaming the tribe, and soldiers were preparing to intervene. Tension coiled in Eleanor's stomach like a live snake. Caleb moved through the camp with quiet authority, but even he could not hide the strain. "You must be ready," he told her as they rode at dawn. "This will not remain a warning. It will become a test of courage, and you must choose what you stand for." Eleanor nodded, heart hammering. She gripped the reins tightly, thinking of the lives depending on her choices. "I will," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. As they approached the river crossing, the soldiers arrived. Guns were drawn, voices shouted, and Eleanor's heart slammed against her ribs. Caleb dismounted, hands raised slightly. "I will not allow this to become bloodshed unnecessarily," he said, his voice carrying across the tense silence. The soldiers hesitated, but one stepped forward, sneering. "Those lands belong to the United States. The tribe has no claim. And the girl, she carries what we need." Eleanor felt her stomach drop. She knew what she had to do. She dismounted slowly, keeping her hands visible, and stepped toward the soldiers. "You will not harm him," she said, her voice steady, though her pulse raced. "I have proof of your deceit, and I will expose it." The men laughed at her. "And who will believe a girl like you?" one mocked. She pulled the documents from her satchel. "Witnesses, records, telegraphs. You will not execute him today. And if you try, the truth will follow you." A tense silence fell. Caleb's eyes, dark and unwavering, met hers. Eleanor realized then that survival was not about fear. It was about courage, even when the odds were impossible. If you're loving Eleanor's courage and want to see what happens next, don't forget to hit that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to follow the full story. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next twist. The morning air was cold against Eleanor's cheeks, biting as she mounted her horse and rode toward the soldiers who still held the camp in a tense blockade. The papers in her satchel felt heavier than any weight she had ever carried, not because of their size, but because of what they represented: truth, justice, and survival. Her pulse was a drum in her ears. Every step forward felt like a gamble. One miscalculation, one wrong word, and the life of Caleb, and possibly her own, could end in an instant. Caleb Iron Bear was standing in the center of the camp, his hands tied, but his gaze unyielding. Despite the situation, he radiated a quiet authority that held the soldiers at bay, if only for a moment. Eleanor's chest tightened. She had never felt the desperation so vividly, not since the day she had lost her parents. Now, she felt it multiplied, heavier, sharper, terrifying in its intensity. "You came back," Caleb said, his voice low but steady, a flicker of something unspoken in his eyes. "I said I wouldn't leave you," Eleanor whispered, keeping her voice calm despite the tremor in her hands. "Not now. Not when they're counting on fear to control us." One of the soldiers stepped forward, pistol raised, but Eleanor did not flinch. She drew the papers from her satchel and held them out, shaking slightly. "This is the proof," she said, her voice cutting across the tense silence. "The manifests, the communications, the falsified reports. You will not execute him. You will not take the land. And if you do, the truth will follow you everywhere you go." The captain of the soldiers laughed, a short, harsh sound. "And who will believe a girl like you? Who will believe what these papers say? You are alone out here, among the plains and the savages." Eleanor felt heat rise to her face, not from the cold but from fury. "I am not alone," she said, her voice sharp. "I have the truth, and I have those who see it. You may think control is yours, but it is fragile, and it is fleeting." Caleb's eyes softened slightly as he nodded toward her. "She speaks rightly," he said. "If we fall today, it will be not for lack of courage." The soldiers hesitated. Murmurs ran through the ranks. The younger men shifted nervously. The elders among them, the ones who had begun to question the morality of their orders, exchanged wary glances. Eleanor's pulse raced. Every second stretched endlessly, but she did not back down. Finally, the captain gestured sharply. "Enough. Stand down for now." His words were a mix of irritation and unease. Eleanor felt the tension lift slightly, but knew the danger was far from over. As Caleb's bindings were removed, he turned to her and spoke quietly. "You have more courage than I imagined." Eleanor shook her head. "I have no choice. Not anymore. I can't watch you die. Not when I have the chance to stop it." The day passed with painstaking slowness. Soldiers began to withdraw, but Eleanor could see the resentment and tension etched on their faces. The land seizure had not been stopped entirely, but the immediate threat to Caleb and the tribe had been deflected. Eleanor realized that survival here was not victory. It was compromise, patience, and relentless moral courage. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the plains with fire-colored streaks, Eleanor and Caleb sat near the riverbank, which was still mostly dry but moving with small trickles of water. The wind carried the scent of dust and distant pine. She watched him, studying the lines of his face, the way his jaw tightened even when he smiled, the depth in his eyes that had seemed lost far beyond what she could imagine. "You know," Eleanor began cautiously, "I never expected any of this. I thought I was just a messenger. I never thought I'd be fighting for lives, for truth for you." Caleb turned his gaze toward her. "You were never just a messenger. Courage finds its way into those who need it most. You have learned more than you realize, Eleanor. More than I could have hoped for." Her breath caught. The wind tugged at her hair, and she felt a flutter of emotion she had not allowed herself to acknowledge before. A bond had formed between them. Not romantic at first, but undeniable in its weight, its intensity, its quiet demand for recognition. Eleanor hesitated. Words failed her. as they often did when the stakes were high and emotions raw. Instead, she simply placed her hand on his, a fleeting touch that spoke volumes. Caleb did not withdraw. His eyes softened, a rare vulnerability passing over his usual stoicism. But peace was fleeting. In the following days, the tension in the territory escalated again. Cattle were still missing. Soldiers made minor incursions, testing the tribe's limits. Eleanor worked tirelessly, documenting, sending word to authorities, and mediating where possible. Each day was a test of patience, courage, and endurance. One evening, she confronted Caleb, frustration breaking through. "We've done everything we can, and yet they continue to push, to threaten. How do we survive when the world wants to see us fail?" Caleb's gaze was steady, unwavering. "By remembering who we are, Eleanor. By remembering what we fight for. Not just ourselves, but everyone depending on us. The world will push, yes, but it cannot destroy what courage has rooted." Eleanor closed her eyes, letting his words settle. She thought of her parents, of the farm, of the town that had turned against her. And she thought of Caleb, standing steadfast, refusing to bend, refusing to yield. She realized that survival was no longer just about her. It was about the people, the land, and the truth. Weeks passed. The soldiers eventually withdrew, frustrated by the evidence Eleanor had supplied and the subtle but firm resistance of Caleb's leadership. The tribe began to rebuild, reclaiming parts of their land and strengthening alliances. Eleanor had gained a place among them, not just as an outsider, but as someone whose courage and actions had earned respect. One evening, as the camp settled and the children played quietly, Eleanor and Caleb stood at the edge of the plains, watching the sun set in streaks of gold and crimson. She turned to him. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" Caleb's eyes softened, reflecting the fading light. "Every day," he said, "and yet, seeing what you have done, seeing how you have endured, I know it was." A small, fleeting smile crossed Eleanor's lips. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace. Not because the world had been kind, but because she had chosen courage, faced fear, and had not let it break her. Their hands brushed again, lingering slightly longer this time. No words were spoken, but the silence spoke volumes. In that moment, Eleanor knew that connection, trust, and respect could form even the harshest of worlds, and that sometimes the most powerful bonds were forged not through love at first sight, but through shared struggle and unwavering courage. She glanced toward the horizon, where the plains stretched endlessly, dry yet alive with possibility. "The plains will never forget," she murmured. "And neither will I." Caleb nodded, a rare, quiet acknowledgement passing between them. "Nor I," he said simply. As the camp settled for the night, Eleanor reflected on the journey she had endured. She had lost family, faced death, navigated cultural divides, and stood against the weight of injustice. But she had survived, and more than survival, she had found purpose, respect, and a bond that transcended fear and uncertainty. Eleanor turned to the camera of her own mind, imagining the audience who would hear her story. If you're watching this, remember, courage is not about winning every battle. It's about standing when the world wants you to fall, about speaking the truth when lies surround you, about choosing the hard path when the easy one tempts you. Never forget to fight for what matters, and never forget who you are. And for those watching now, following along with her journey, she would have added a final thought with a smile in her voice. If you felt the fear, the courage, the struggle, make sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of standing firm, no matter the odds. You never know what strength you'll discover in yourself until you try. The night wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it the scent of dust, pine, and distant fires. Eleanor sat quietly beside Caleb, watching shadows stretch and recede, the stars emerging one by one. She knew the road ahead was uncertain, filled with more challenges and threats. But she also knew that whatever came, she would face it. She had chosen courage. She had chosen truth. She had chosen to remain steadfast, to fight, to endure. Somewhere in the distance, A child laughed, speaking words in Lakota that Eleanor had come to understand. The sound was clear, pure, and filled with hope. She reached for Caleb's hand again, and this time, neither withdrew. They stood together, two souls bound not by destiny, but by shared struggle, respect, and a quiet, unwavering certainty that they could endure whatever the plains threw at them next. As the camera would pull back, sweeping across the vast, silent plains, Eleanor's voice would carry one final thought. The plains will test you. The world will challenge you. But your courage can leave a mark that lasts forever. And with that, the plains stretched endless and eternal. The river dry yet persistent. And the story, Eleanor's story, etched into the memory of the land itself. If you felt Eleanor's courage, if her story moved you, don't forget to hit like, subscribe for more epic stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because every story deserves to be remembered, just like the plains that refuse to forget.